talk to you. Philip Bond there, great Tory thinker, slightly on the left of the party, in inverted commas as it were, but someone who worked very, very closely with Dave Cameron and had his fingerprints all over defining the Conservative Party at that era. I'm going to come back to you, Benedict, to pick up on the second point he made when I was saying, it's about incompetence in the Home Office, about boat people, about policing and all the rest of it. He said it's a dysfunctional state, and in his assessment, what folk out there want is a state that works and are prepared to pay for it.
And what I think you could say about Liz Truss is that she identified that things couldn't go on as they were. You could also say that about the previous administration when it was effectively being run by Dominic Cummings. That was his big thing, was about, ripping up the civil service, changing everything because it just wasn't working. It's not that people don't recognise this. They have recognised it in the Conservative Party for a long time. It's just about getting to grips with it. And I say all the sort of the on-running issues, Brexit, the ideological battles that are going on, none of that helps if you don't actually have a sort of a coherent worldview and everybody isn't on the same side. For example, if you have your chief of staff and your wife at each other's throats, it's a recipe for disaster. You're not going to get that sort of change. And until we have a government, be it Labour or Tory, that actually has those sort of infighting issues sorted, we're not going to get to that stage.
No, just finish the point. No, brilliant. My good manners were insisting I waited until you finished that thought, which you did, because folk who are watching on television will know that there is the familiar setting that we've been talking about over the last couple of hours. That is the press room within Downing Street. Tom was suggesting it's actually within number 9. It's just down the corridor a wee bit, but you will know that whether it was COVID press conferences in the old days or visiting heads of state, that's where they do it. 2 flags, 1 podium with that curious twisted wooden design to it, which I don't particularly take to, but I'm not a student of architecture. I'm sure it's a wonderful thing. But anyway, that's where Liz Truss will be standing in very short order. The minute we do see movement there, or Tom shouts in my ear, I promise faithfully that we will stop whatever else we're talking about, so you will not miss a word of Liz Truss giving that press conference in very short order. But I want to bring in Catherine and then Liam on the same point I was just discussing there with Benedict, because I do think we're now inching closer to profound political things and also the finances of profound political things. Philip Bond, left of the Conservative Party, old mate, known him for years. We have a dysfunctional state. People want decent services for which they are prepared to pay. I go along with the first 2 points. I'm not entirely sure about the final one. Catherine.
Yes, and I've heard that figure that he gave. I think it was 7%, wasn't it, as well, in favour of only a very small number of people want tax cuts and cuts to public services, which of course is where this appeared to be going, although Liz Truss did say in Prime Minister's questions categorically not. But clearly the sums didn't appear to add up and people were left wondering. Therese Coffey, the Deputy Prime Minister and Health Secretary, is reportedly having an emergency call at the moment with Liz Truss's supporters ahead of the press conference. Make of that what you will. Also, former Chancellor Philip Hammond.
Therese Coffey, one of her closest, Liz Truss's closest friends and her deputy in government.
Very close friend and ally. And Philip Hammond, also ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer, has been saying that if the Conservatives decide to go ahead and get rid of Liz Truss and bring in another PM, that there would have to be a general election.
You were going to need more popcorn and more cold water in this studio, and you are not going to miss a jot, Doma, or the rest of it. Liam Halligan, you may be tempted to launch into that last speculation that our mutual friend Catherine was just talking about. But your reading of this dysfunctional state, that people do want decent police services, decent housing, something you've always banged on about, and all the rest of it, and they're prepared to pay for it. I think they want both, but aren't prepared to pay for it.
I think they are to some degree, and
they want somebody else to pay for it.
I know the polling that Philip's referring to, and the questions were sort of slightly loaded. Look, I do think low taxes are pretty popular with most people across the UK. If low taxes were on offer, freezing corporation tax would certainly be very popular with lots of small businesses. You pay corporation tax if you're a laundrette or you run a kebab shop.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be mindful that more money isn't the answer to everything, particularly in the NHS, where we spend above the OECD average on our health service, and we have almost the worst outcomes of any advanced country apart from the United States. That's not an ideological point, that is a factual point shown by many, many academic surveys of the state of our health service. And there's a lot of mischief going on here. Philip Hammond, no longer an MP, Anil Duncan, no longer an MP, people who really didn't like Kwasi Kwarteng, they really don't like the Brexit wing of the Conservative Party. I do think there are what we called in the part of London where I grew up, Alistair, some afters going on in terms of the post 11 o'clock, drink up now please, and the evening really begins. There is some of this going on.
There's a political lockdown.
There is some of this going on in the Conservative Party. I also think whoever was Prime Minister now, it's like a really bad game of pass the parcel. Whoever was Prime Minister now would be presiding over rising interest rates. Yeah. They would be presiding over the withdrawal of quantitative easing and an increase in hardship, not least around living standards. And I think history will judge. Whatever Liz Truss says now, Alistair, whether she stays, she goes, whether she tries to bolster her government or whether there's proper capitulation, and we'll analyse that after. I do think history will judge. So far, she's been slightly unlucky.
All right. Well, there we are. Unlucky generals and all the rest of it. If you're watching on television, you know what that is. It's the press room within Downing Street. And if you're listening on radio, that was Liam Halligan talking. Here we are, Prime Minister Liz Truss. Microphones down in the studio. Here's the Prime Minister.
Good afternoon. My conviction that this country needs to go for growth is rooted in my personal experience. I know what it's like to grow up somewhere that isn't feeling the benefits of growth. I saw what that meant, and I'm not prepared to accept that for our country. I want a country where people can get good jobs, new businesses can set up, and families can afford an even better life. That's why, from day one, I've been ambitious for growth. Since the 2008 financial crisis, the potential of this great country has been held back by persistently weak growth. I want to deliver a low-tax, high-wage, high-growth economy. It's what I was elected by my party to do. That mission remains. People across this country rightly want stability. That's why we acted to support businesses and households with their energy costs this winter. It's also the case that global economic conditions are worsening due to the continuation of Putin's appalling war in Ukraine. And on top of this, debt was amassed helping people through the COVID pandemic. But it is clear that parts of our mini-budget went further and faster than markets were expecting. So the way we are delivering our mission right now has to change. We need to act now to reassure the markets of our fiscal discipline. I have therefore decided to keep the increase in corporation tax that was planned by the previous government. This will raise £18 billion per year. It will act as a down payment on our full medium-term fiscal plan, which will be accompanied by a forecast from the independent OBR. We will do whatever is necessary to ensure debt is falling as a share of the economy in the medium term. We will control the size of the state to ensure that taxpayers' money is always well spent. Our public sector will become more efficient to deliver world-class services for the British people. And spending will grow less rapidly than previously planned. I met the former Chancellor earlier today. I was incredibly sorry to lose him. He is a great friend, and he shares my vision to set this country on the path to growth. Today, I have asked Jeremy Hunt to become the new Chancellor. He's one of the most experienced and widely respected government ministers and parliamentarians, and he shares my convictions and ambitions for our country. He will deliver the medium-term fiscal plan at the end of this month. He will see through the support we are providing to help families and businesses. including our energy price guarantee that's protecting people from higher energy bills this winter. And he will drive our mission to go for growth, including taking forward the supply-side reforms that our country needs. We owe it to the next generation to improve our economic performance, to deliver higher wages, new jobs, and better public services, and to ease the burden of debt. I have acted decisively today because my priority is ensuring our country's economic stability. As Prime Minister, I will always act in the national interest. This is always my first consideration. I want to be honest, this is difficult, but we will get through this storm, and we will deliver the strong and sustained growth that can transform the prosperity of our country for generations to come. I'll now take questions. Can I start with Ben Riley-Smith, Telegraph?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Clearly a difficult day. Can you explain to the public why you think you should remain as Prime Minister, given you junked a key tax cut that led you to be elected and got rid of your Chancellor?
I'm absolutely determined to see through what I have promised, to deliver a higher growth, more prosperous United Kingdom, to see us through the storm we face. We've already delivered the energy price guarantee, making sure people aren't facing huge bills this winter. But it was right, in the face of the issues that we had, that I acted decisively to ensure that we have economic stability, because that is vitally important to people and businesses right across our country. Harry Cole.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Harry Cole from The Sun. You were the one that wanted to cut the 45p rate. You stood on a platform to win the leadership of the Conservative Party on a platform to cut corporation tax. You and the Chancellor, the ex-Chancellor, designed this budget together, in lockstep, we're told, at times in secret, the two of you. He has to go because of the fallout from it. How come you get to stay?
Well, my priority is making sure we deliver the economic stability that our country needs. That's why I had to take the difficult decisions I've taken today. The mission remains the same. We do need to raise our country's economic growth levels. We do need to deliver for people across the country. We're committed to delivering on the energy price guarantee, which people are already seeing in their bills. But ultimately, we also need to make sure that we have economic stability, and I have to act in the national interest as Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC.
Excuse the bluntness, Prime Minister, but given everything that has happened, what credibility do you have to continue governing?
What I've done today is made sure that we have economic stability in this country. Jeremy Hunt, as Chancellor, is somebody who shares my desire for a high-growth, low-tax economy. But we recognise, because of current market issues, we have to deliver the mission in a different way. And that's what we are absolutely committed to do, achieving that stability at what is a very difficult time globally. Robert Peston.
Prime Minister, the former Tory Chancellor, Philip Hammond, has just said that you have totally trashed the Tory party's election-winning reputation for economic competence. Will you apologise to your party?
Well, I am determined to deliver on what I set out when I campaigned to be party leader. We need to have a high growth economy, but we have to recognise that we are facing very difficult issues as a country. And it was right, in the national interest, that I made the decisions I've made today to restore that economic stability so we can deliver, first of all, helping people through this winter and next winter with their energy bills, but also making sure that our country is on the long-term footing for sustainable economic growth. Thank you very much, everybody.
Aren't you going to say sorry?
Well, there you have it. There you have it. Liz Truss is not going anywhere, but nor is a big and significant chunk of the budget. She has confirmed, as we've been talking about all morning and is across most of the newspapers, that the increase in corporation tax as penciled in by former Chancellor but one, going back even before Kwasi Kwarteng, Rishi Sunak, from 19 up to 25%, yielding £18 billion, is now back in the budget. She said, I want to deliver a low-tax, high-growth economy. The mission remains. There then followed a series of questions. She took 4. And before asking my panel here what they make of what was said, I just underline the fact that the first question that she took was from, to her, the vitally important Daily Telegraph, Ben Riley-Smith. How can you stay as Prime Minister? She then took Harry Cole from the equally important Red Top Sun newspaper. You two were in lockstep. He has to go. How come you get to stay? And then the two big broadcasters, Chris Mason from the BBC, where's your credibility? And Robert Peston, ITV. Philip Hammond's just answered the question. You've trashed the Tory reputation for economic competence. Will you apologise? No, I'm staying. Goodbye, good morning. And off she toddled. So there you have it in one. Let's start with the economics of it. It's only 18 billion. The IFS have talked about a 60 billion hole.